What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 611 of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast, Hot Tags of the Week. We're going to be breaking down quite a bit on this edition. And of course, we want to know what everybody else has to say. So drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you don't know who we are and what we're going to be talking about here, I'm your host as always, Tony Mango, joined as always by Callum Wiggins.
Hello.
And Robert E. Felice.
Hi there.
As another reminder, as you are leaving your comments, make sure that you are subscribed to this channel, ring that little notification bell to get those email alerts, hit the like button on this video, check that you are joining the channel membership if you want to help us out on the monetary side of things. And if you're not already over there on the Patreon, or if you want to double up, I mean, I'm not going to stop you for doing that. There's also a little thanks button that's over there on YouTube. And if you're listening to us elsewhere and you are on Spotify or Amazon Music or something like that, then keep in mind that you can just hop on over to YouTube and do these things. Also, Redbubble and TeePublic are where you can find the merchandise options. And look at that, plugs are out of the way. Let's start getting into this because this is a kind of a packed edition. Now, we've got Lacey Evans to talk about. We've got Edge. We've got Punk, Cash Wheeler, Heatwave predictions. We're talking a little bit about Leatherface, funny enough. Asuka, the G1. Where do you guys want to start off?
I think the simplest thing to do is to have Callum wrap up the G1 right quick. Go from there.
I can do that. So G1 ended. Yeah, G1 ended at the weekend with the semi-finals and the finals. We had it was Okada versus Evil, and then Will Ospreay versus Tetsuya Naito in the semis. What happened was Okada beat Evil in a match which wasn't very good because of constant interference from everyone involved. Literally every other move that Evil did in that match was either a low blow or a right to the eye or a thumb to the eye or a steel chair shot or something of that ilk. And Okada just beat every single person in the House of Torture and then pinned Evil. So at least the right person won. After a G1, which I will fully admit has not been particularly thrilling from start to finish, Ospreay versus Naito was a bona fide 5-star classic, like one of the best matches that I've seen Naito ever have. And of course, it's Ospreay that gives him hit because Ospreay's great, and Naito beat Ospreay. And then they went to the final the following day with Naito defeating Okada. So my prediction from the very start of Naito winning this G1 came to fruition, which means that somehow, some way, we are going to have Sonada main event the Wrestle Kingdom, seemingly, against Tetsuya Naito.
Triple main event Wrestle Kingdom. Hey, let's have the fans poll. What match do you want to see close the show so Naito can lose his mind again?
So overall, pretty underwhelming G1, kind of redeemed somewhat by the final two matches because Ospreay versus Naito was fantastic, and then Okada versus Naito was very great as well. So yeah, I think I was gonna say it's the right person that won, but it was the person that I expected to win. So at least they went with someone who was quite realistic to get the victory. And yeah, so we kind of know what our Wrestle Kingdom main event is right now, even though there's still a few bumps in the road to go now, because Sonada will at least be defending his title at some point. We don't know when, but he will be at some point defending it against Evil, because Evil beat him in the G1. And also Naito has to defend his right to challenge at Wrestle Kingdom against anybody who he lost to in G1, which were Shane Haste and Jeff Cobb. So
I'm sure that they're clamoring for Shane Haste. The headline.
I mean, clearly we're gonna get Shane Haste versus Evil, right?
Yeah, in some
that'll be the main event of Wrestle Kingdom for sure.
Would you stop watching if that was Wrestle Kingdom?
That's how we know we're on the worst timeline.
That's fair.
All goes back to Brock. Shouldn't it be an Undertaker, right? Well, the G1 wraps up with that, and I don't have any other indie news outside of talking about Asuka's tweets about Japanese wrestling promotions. This was something that, kind of it's on like that outside skirts of what we normally talk about, because obviously I'm focused much more on WWE and AEW. So I don't know too much about the specifics here, but the history of Asuka from different promotions before she got to NXT is something that you might be able to fill me in on, and the context of what she was talking about. What's the best way to sum that up? She essentially had said that she has a lot of enemies out there. It's a good way of, I guess, being the launching point for this.
Yeah, I think that's probably putting it mildly. Essentially, again, I'm not like fully versed in a lot of what Asuka did prior to joining WWE. That's kind of my first real exposure to her was when she was in NXT. So any stuff before that, I'd kind of just watched in small little segments. Like I've seen a few matches here or there when she was wrestling as Kana against like certain names of people. I know she teamed up with like Hikaru Shida quite a lot on the circuit. But as far as I'm aware, essentially she kind of views, and whether this is accurate or not, but at least from her perspective, that promotions like Stardom were created in order to keep her down or to try and blacklist her from pro wrestling, because she had what is what's known around as a manifesto, which she put out there about essentially how she feels that wrestling should be in Japan, or at least like from Japanese women's wrestling perspective. I can't remember the full details about it, but it was essentially along the lines of trying to move away from slightly wackier moves that aren't quote unquote realistic, being a bit more like serious in the ring, being a bit more like serious with gimmicks, that kind of stuff. Just trying to be a bit like, yeah, I guess trying to make the women's wrestling sport a bit more serious at a time where women's wrestling, not just in Japan, but like all over the world, was treated as kind of a sideshow or a way for like old men in the crowd to get off to, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're talking the Divas division, not the Four Horsewomen.
Yeah.
Onward.
But yeah, but it was even worse in Japan, though.
I was going to say
that's a very, very seedy environment for women's wrestling, especially at that point in time. It's I think it's improved now, but it's not like immensely. And so this essentially having this manifesto in place and having a kind of a culture in Japan of the women's promotion being run by these types of old men meant that she feels that she was immediately blacklisted from those promotions. And as a company like Stardom comes up in order to, I guess, contain this in a way, or to try and like build its own little circle where they're protected from her, because they wouldn't never book her. She's never ever wrestled for Stardom. Throughout her entire time in Japan, she always considered herself a freelancer. So she would always just go from promotion to promotion, do bits and pieces. Yeah, I'm just looking now, but I'm pretty certain she never ever wrestled for Stardom. She still seems.
We'll create our own Asuka, blackjack and hookers.
And then and so after that, it's obviously she comes to WWE, and it's kind of like boiling under the surface a little bit. So she still has these animosity towards people, clearly, as the most recent tweets demonstrate, towards the management in Stardom. She even pinpointed a couple of people that she's particularly worried about in terms of their booking and positioning, which were Shuri and Mina Shirakawa. Shuri's an interesting one because she was a very long-reigning not Wonder Stardom, World of Stardom champion, which is kind of like their main championship belt. She held that for over a year, a short while ago. So, like, maybe they feel like she's being positioned quite far down the card, or not being allowed to be who she is. Again, you'd have to ask her about what she's particularly worried about. Shirakawa I can kind of understand, because Shirakawa is a bit of a she carried a bit of a negative reputation coming into the business, because she was a former gravure model, which is essentially like Japan's equivalent of like, you wouldn't call it, I don't even know if you call it softcore, it's bikini modeling essentially, but
it's a fetish thing for sure.
Yeah. And so she came into Stardom and like has actually developed into being a very good wrestler now. and she's been given a few titles recently, but there seems to be a trend with her where she's given a title and then immediately in like her first or second defense she loses it. Like this year she's
Sasha
already been.
Banks, stink.
Hmm?
That Sasha Banks stink.
Oh yeah, having that similar. But yeah, so she won the Wonder of Stardom Championship earlier this year, which was like a long-running thing for her because in a previous match she'd gotten her front teeth knocked out in a Wonder of Stardom Championship match with the same person who was that champion, and so it was kind of built as like her big rematch. When she just came back, she'd formed her own faction, and so she won the title, and it felt like this big crowning moment for her. And then she lost it in her second defense against Tam Nakano, who won it and also won the other. She was already the World of Stardom champion, and so she won the other belt. So she just held 2 belts after that point, and Shirakawa was left with nothing. And then she recently won the tag team titles with Mariah May, and then lost it on their first defense. So I'd say I think that she probably sees a lot of her. I could see that Asuka maybe seeing a lot of herself in Mina because she is like obviously now more on the veteran side of things at 41 years old. So maybe feels like she's overlooked because I think Mina is 35, 36. So even though she's only been wrestling for a few years, she's obviously now on the more veteran side. So maybe she feels like she's being passed up opportunities because of her age. That would be my speculation, but again, you'd have to ask her to know the real opinion why she's so particularly worried about those two. But essentially, it all boils down to Asuka doesn't really like the management hierarchy in Japan's women's wrestling in Japan, particularly as pertains to Stardom, and she's now become very, very vocal about it.
And she's also having fun on Twitter too. Like her thing about being concerned about them and whatnot. Somebody asked her right afterward, "But how do you feel you're doing personally?" And she said, "I'll build a private arcade." Like, you know. So it seems like maybe it's just something that she wanted to get off her chest. Maybe she's trying to help them out or something. But over the course of these past couple of days, I've paid more attention to Asuka's Twitter account, and she seems like a fun follow. You know, she has a habit, it seems, of tweeting back people with the puke emoji as like a spitting the green mist thing. And she keeps saying, "You, my devotee, are merciful too." I'm like, I'm digging this account. And good for her if she's speaking up on people that maybe were not the best people to be around in the business.
Yeah. I can't speak to too much of it, but I think as somebody who has a lot of authority and has proven like there are other paths, it's nice for her to be able to speak out.
So somebody else we might be hearing something from as far as speaking out and not being in a company anymore. Let's talk about Lacey Evans. She is gone from WWE. And of course, if you didn't quite know that, that's partially because WWE never announces these things anymore, which drives me fucking crazy. I really wish we got back to the era of them putting it up on the website so we know for a fact that people are gone when they're gone and whatever. But she had switched a couple things around her social media accounts, so people started paying attention, because once you change your name and you get rid of the WWE stuff, then everybody's like, all right, the writing's on the wall, kind of. And she had switched it to Limitless Macy, which, if anybody doesn't know, Macy is her real name. And she had tweeted out another thing about like how many hours are left, and then eventually now it's come out formally known as WWE superstar Lacey Evans. She's gone from WWE. Whether or not she requested the release or she was let go is something I've not been able to find. Does anybody have any kind of more information about it you've come across with that?
The vibe I'm getting is that she requested the release.
That's what I kind of assumed. Because it seems like they were just sort of sitting on it, and she was like, well, you know, I just want to leave then if nothing's going to work out. She hasn't been seen in quite a while. And even then, really, she's wrestled like... She wrestles like 2 matches and then disappears for 3 months, and then wrestles a match and then disappears for a month, and that kind of thing. Like, they were really inconsistent with her for the past 2+ years, it seems. And she is apparently opening up a diner. She has been teasing more OnlyFans content for people that are interested in that. I haven't heard of anything like plans as far as her popping up on any kind of indie shows or anything, but this is worth talking about.
Corgan's not going to announce, but he's going to pick up Lacey Evans for the NWA.
She should pretty much go to NWA. Yeah. Like, realistically, look, she has a lot of positives to her that WWE didn't tap into, and she's got a lot of negatives that WWE skirted around for a little bit. And we might do a Superstar Scores in the future for Lacey Evans. I don't know. I did one on my own just a few minutes before we got started here, and she didn't honestly rank all that high. She ranked my 4th lowest score out of everybody that we've done. But there are definitely elements of Lacey Evans that had more potential than what she was able to accomplish in WWE. And the detracting elements, I would assume, would keep her out of an AEW. So she's really got 2 options. Well, 3. I guess technically 4 if you just count not wrestling anymore, because that's something that could happen. But if she does stick around in wrestling, I would assume, of course, anybody could do the indies. That's an obvious thing. But Impact does tend to pick people up. But I think she would fit a lot better in NWA. I think that she would pretty much go there, win the championship outright. I don't know who their champion is right now. I can't be bothered to... It's still Camille?
Camille for 800 days.
800 days. Good for her. I could see Lacey Evans beating her for that. I mean, whatever they want to call her, they wouldn't call her Lacey Evans. I mean, they could call her Macy Evans for all we know. But
is her actual last name Evers?
No, it's Estrella or Estrella. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm assuming it's like a Estrella. But she could go by Macy Evans, and that wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. Or you just change just one letter, and then that's as close as you can get, really. Or Lacey Evan, or something like that. That's where I could see her going. Or just not doing wrestling at all, because she could very well do the OnlyFans thing. She could be focusing on this diner. She could be focusing on being a mom. She could go back into the military, for all I know.
Is the most Lacey Evans thing I could have imagined without actually thinking about it. Of course she would open a nice old-fashioned diner, like
serve some sweet tea.
Yeah, kind of like that for her. Look, the discussion around Lacey, it is what it is. Like, Lacey's one of those people where people got a whiff of something. She said some dumb things, that's about depression and things like that, and it was over for her. Like,
she's got a couple things that were dinging against her, like the thing with the fan ringside.
All right, that was not her fault. That one was not her fault.
That's not necessarily her fault, but you know how people are. So that's something that people go like, oh, that must clearly mean that she's got an agenda. But then there's also the Sergeant Slaughter stuff that's been happening, which I would assume partially Sergeant Slaughter needs to take a chill pill a little bit, but it's not good. It's not like she is coming out of this with like, hey, it's Rey Mysterio leaving or something,
Right. I think this is not the podcast for it because we got a lot of stuff that's popped up. But for me, the thing that mostly I feel with Lacey Evans is like, damn, the women's movement in WWE really fell off. And that's not to say like I was a huge Lacey Evans fan, but I do remember there was a time where we were kind of into the gimmick and thought that there could be something for her. And it just sort of feels like there's not a lot of people doing anything in that company in regards to women's wrestling outside of a couple names we'll talk about when we do actually mention one or two things from TV. But it's just a shame, like that's what I think of when I think of Lacey Evans. The whole division is just not as strong as it once was.
I don't really have much more to add about that, and I can't say that I'm gonna be upset that she's gone. Like she really didn't add anything of value, especially in the last couple of years of her running the company. And she was out for over a year at one point because of the her most recent pregnancy. I think that she never really improved much beyond her time in NXT. I think she had a good presence about her, but I think the in-ring was always quite sloppy. and like especially when she got onto like matches with some bigger names, it really kind of showed up how far removed she was from it, and she was probably called up too early because she had a good look. Yeah, so NWA probably. I think that obviously AEW should stay away from her because they have enough things to worry about at the moment to really add her name, her fuel to the fire. This is not what people were talking about when they say book the women's division better or give more attention to the women's division. No, not by signing her. I would say Impact should probably avoid bringing her in as well. I think their women's division is their knockouts division is pretty strong at the moment, and so I think that she would cast more of a negative dispersion on it than a positive one, and I don't think they really need it in terms of depth. They can find other women on the independent circuit and bring them in every now and again. NWA would be the most obvious destination because she would immediately become a hero there. Yeah, I could see her like immediately signing and then immediately winning the women's title because that's kind of the way they would act. But yeah, that's the only wrestling destination. I think that you should probably just make your money on OnlyFans while you can.
And I wouldn't blame her if that's the case because Mandy Rose had tweeted out like a little thinking emoji, which I'm sure plenty of people would be interested in seeing a crossover there. So that's something we'll pay a little bit of attention to here and there. Tell you if she pops up at another event or something along those lines. But that's somebody. Oh, go ahead.
One final question. Yes, Lacey Evans wasn't the best. Yada yada, whatever. I want to know if she just wanted to leave because she's like, fuck this, you're not doing anything with me. Can anyone really blame her?
No,
because they really weren't doing anything with her, and it seems like her last thing got cut off just because Sergeant Slaughter, who's not a real fucking military person,
like Lacey,
got butthurt that she was using the Cobra Clutch. I mean, that doesn't seem very fair to me.
No, it seems like maybe her biggest supporter was Vince, and now that he's quote unquote not as involved on the day-to-day operations for booking creative, that maybe that's one of the reasons why we haven't seen as much from her. Maybe Triple H is just like, look, I don't really want to focus as much on her. I want to focus on some other people. I want to put my attention on, for instance, EO. Like EO had a much better year than Lacey. And then, it could be all sorts of different factors. It could be a matter of the Sergeant Slaughter stuff maybe got in the way of them being like, all right, let's change the character and we'll figure out something else. But they've changed the character around a little bit here and there, and they've also botched trying to change the character because let's face it, whether it's partially on her, partially on WWE, partially on the fans to just accept things, or, it's kind of, you have to figure out the good synergy between all of that. But a lot of blame can be put on WWE for doing things like maybe you don't have the character do the whole sympathy angle for like 6 weeks or however long they did with these increasingly more annoying segments that were not really getting over with the crowd so much, and then immediately switch it over and go, but you're supposed to boo her. I don't think that did her any justice. They could have probably gotten away with just having her come out, be the sympathetic, hey, I've gone through a lot of struggles and this is why you should potentially support me thing. But it's also like, all right, well, if you botch the whole thing like that with the Emelina type, set a bunch of stuff up and then go, I gotcha, whatever, now it doesn't matter. Also, politics aside, and, we're not going to get into it on this podcast in particular, but this is not the time frame to be like very pro-government and military babyface for a lot of people. You know what I mean? We're kind of in like a, hey, why haven't we started a revolution type thing for both sides of the political spectrum? Let's be honest. It's not like there's like, well, that's the one good side and the other side's, 100% wrong and the other side's 100% great. It's just the government in general is in kind of a mess and people are upset. So that didn't quite get over the way that they would have expected to either. But some of it does fall on Lacey for not having any other options really, or not getting over with any of the other characters over the years, because she had multiple years in NXT and on the main roster that, look, you didn't need to give a gimmick to some of these other people and they got over anyway. Becky, for the most part, is just Becky.
Talk about Becky winning.
Do we have something to talk about with Becky?
Well, TV stuff, I think.
I mean, the only thing's really Trish and Becky, and we'll probably get into that another time. I don't think we're really going to get too deep into it, but yeah, I mean, I think there's blame all across the board for Lacey not getting a higher spot on the WWE totem pole, and maybe she wants to pursue wrestling elsewhere and try to see if she can be a bigger deal in a smaller pond, or maybe she's just like, I'm fucking done with wrestling, and I wouldn't blame her in any way when it comes to that. But that seems like that's an open and shut case. What seems like it's also ending, but maybe it's not 100% done, is that Edge is going to wrestle maybe his final WWE match tonight on SmackDown against Sheamus. He has said that this is the last match for his current contract. And as far as whether or not he's going to sign another contract, return, do any other guest spots or anything like that, he just doesn't know. Which I don't blame him for having that kind of a response, because let's be honest, Edge doesn't need to continue to wrestle. And he is past his prime as far as his age. He has been very lucky as far as his injuries are concerned, about not having major problems with, like, he came back into the ring and then he took a bad bump and now he's paralyzed or something, which very easily could be something in the future. I mean, people could get hurt with anything. And when you have a history of those kind of problems, that's something you have to watch out for. Do you guys think we're going to see Edge's final match tonight, or do you think he's going to continue in some other way? Maybe he goes to AEW, maybe he wrestles for WWE some more.
No, all right, I'm going to, cards on the table. I am hoping and praying that we see this man show up in All Elite Wrestling at some point in the next 2 weeks. I think it's very interesting that there's a lot of language being used where it went from last year was, hey, we're going to say goodbye together. And then it's like, yeah, I'm going to fight Sheamus. And it's the last match on my WWE contract. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's the last match on my contract. If he knew he was done in Toronto, don't you think that they would have rolled out the red carpet? Yes, the whole episode is celebrating 25 years of Edge, but don't you think they would have built it up a little bit?
It does seem a little rushed. It's just sort of came out of nowhere.
I'm getting Daniel Bryan vibes where it was just like, oh, hey, he's not under contract. I did not like this last run of Edge. My favorite thing he did was the trilogy with Rollins, and outside of that, the three-way at Mania with Roman and Bryan. I know that he's getting older. I know he doesn't necessarily even have to do it. I know to ask him to change to just being Adam Copeland or Adam Impact or Sexton Hardcastle or whatever the fuck he was going to call himself is a lot to ask. But I had put out a tweet just naming so many of the first time ever matches. Not even touching on like the Hardys and the full circleness of that. But just thinking, he hasn't fought Omega. He hasn't fought Joe. He hasn't fought someone like Adam Cole, MJF. Even like a fun one-off, Christopher Daniels. Like there's so many people there. And then you think you put him with Christian, either as opponents or as a tag team. Put him as a tag team, they got the Young Bucks, FTR, Lucha Brothers. We'll get there. the Lucha Brothers. And then you think as a trios with Jericho, you got CMFTR, you've got the Elite, there's so much there.
He's got a lot of young guys that could learn a lot from being in the ring with him, like Darby Allin and Sammy Guevara, Jack Perry, Ricky Starks.
Edge and Christian against Sting and Darby, just to get Edge and Sting in the ring for just one off.
I would love to see Edge versus Orange Cassidy.
That would be a fun match. There's so much there that I don't like. Look, he could honestly end it all, and we would all have to just be real with ourselves and say it's cool that he's even able to wrestle again. But I am just holding on to hope that like we're getting Edge in AEW, if not for Wembley, as a huge surprise for Chicago, which doesn't really have a lot right now. You know? That would be really cool.
I think that I'm done with Edge.
Even if he were to go to AEW?
Yeah. Listen, he's in his early 50s now. And
he's not 50
yet. He's closing in on 50. He's in and around 50. It's pretty much there. At this point, do AEW really need another old man to come in and have matches with guys much younger and beat them? I think that if Edge was to come back to AEW, it should be very much on a very limited schedule. So you have maybe a couple of big matches, or you only bring him back for like a 6-month to a year run, and then he goes. I don't know if I want him wrestling every week or wrestling everybody on the roster just for the sake of I had a match against Edge. Because everyone complains, everyone always moans and whines about how AEW seems to not being able to give enough, not being able to put enough consistent booking behind somebody or give them enough time to showcase themselves. When people are always complaining about, why isn't Top Flight getting enough match time on Dynamite and stuff, or why is the Fiend not showing up, and why is she just in Ring of Honor, and like loads of other things, like just that you always hear the people saying like, why is so and so not appearing on Dynamite more often, or why is so and so not getting more matches? And then you bring in another guy who's going to take up another spot for somebody like younger and further down the card that could need an opportunity. I'm not saying that, and I'm saying this actually, fundamentally, Edge is past his prime, and he can't, even though people would say, oh, I'd love to see him against him. No, what you'd love to see is Edge from 10, 15 years ago against that guy. He's not that guy anymore. He can have good matches. He can still have some very good matches. Christian can still have great matches at this point in time. But I think that we shouldn't be devoting so much time to just having another XWE guy, because the more it happens, the more you are starting to get into the mindset of, this is just TNA again.
Those are very valid points, and I do understand where you're coming from, because
just like as a guy who is going to that Wembley show, it would be a big pop. Again, assumingly he can't use Metalingus.
Sure you can. It's just a song. You can't use the You Think You Know Me, but...
Oh, because the WWE not own the rights to...
No, it's just a song on their album.
What if they bought the rights to it?
Yeah, there might be some kind of weird contractual thing.
I mean, there's Rob Zombie.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, him coming out to Durango number 5 instead. That'd be... but I think that... Yeah, I'd say it would be a cool moment. I just think that, like, I don't need to see him wrestle that much more at this point in his career.
I agree with you in some ways, because I can understand if this run burned you out on Edge, because it burned me out on him a little bit. But I got kind of hyped at the idea that, okay, maybe he knows that this run wasn't great, and he wants to try to have some fun on the way out.
Also, keep in mind... Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and, I understand what you're saying about not hiring another old guy, but I will say this in defense of my stance. I am one of the only people I know that's really still very cool with Chris Jericho being as featured as he is.
Oh, I'm super cool with Jericho still being there. I just don't need like 5 or 6 of him.
I agree with that.
Like
it's
the
just
fact that he's there, it makes him the one of the only ones there. Like him and Sting barely wrestles really anyway. Like you obviously got Jeff Jarrett in there now as well. To be fair, they've got quite a few now because the Hardys and all this other stuff. So it just feels like it's becoming too much more of a nostalgia area rather than this
a youthful
hot young alternative. Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Tony?
Who really is left in the WWE roster that is worth having a program with Edge?
The only person having a program with Edge that he did wrestle at a house show, but he hasn't really worked, would be Kevin Owens to me, and right behind him, maybe Ciampa. But they've fucked Ciampa to where it's not an intriguing fight at the moment.
And they could do a Cody Rhodes versus Edge thing. They could do a number of different, and yeah, I mean, he could get a potentially good match out of people that you're not paying any attention. For all we know, Edge versus Riddick Moss could be a fucking good match. Who knows? But there's not really like okay, here's your go-to list of people that you need to work with for fantasy dream matches anymore. He's done the AJ Styles stuff. He did the Randy Orton follow-up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't care to really see like Edge versus Karrion Kross or Edge versus Rey Mysterio in another match or Edge against, I don't need to see him spear Top Dollar.
And they gave us, he did some really cool things. Like his last match was him against AJ against Ray, which again, as Callum pointed out, you probably wanted to see those guys 10, 15 years ago. But I still think they had a fun little match. And I think this match with Sheamus is going to be a nice, fun little match.
Which makes sense, too, that he would potentially round out his career with the guy that was tied into bringing him back. I think that's a nice tip of the hat to Sheamus. If he's done, then I'll still have plenty people of, man, I wish I could have seen Edge in his prime against this person and all, the way that we do with everybody. If he continues to wrestle, I honestly would rather see him in AEW to have those matches with the people like Sammy Guevara and, Penta and whatever else, that he might end up having a decent enough little feud with or something, or just one-off matches. He doesn't need to have feuds with everybody. But then I would still want him to wrestle his last match in WWE because for me, he's a WWE guy and I would rather him end his career that way unless it was Edge versus Christian and they both bowed out. Then I can understand that.
And right now, look, there is that too, because they had that beautiful moment in the Rumble and then it was like, what do you mean he's going to AEW? Like, how did they never capitalize on Christian?
It's one of those missed opportunities that's like, God damn it, WWE, why did you drop the ball? But that might be one of the reasons why, or he could just be perfectly honest and just be saying, look, I'm going to step away for a little bit and I legitimately don't know. And it's all up to him because as much as we want to see him do certain things or might not want to see him do certain things, for me, I was sitting there going, my God, move on from this Judgment Day thing. It was an entire year wasted that could have had other matches. For all we know, he really loved doing that and it's up to him. So
even there, like he's so open about, yep, that was failing with me at the helm, and I'm glad that they kind of found themselves eventually. It didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. Like I get the vibe of, hey, I did the thing for WWE. I honored that and came back there, but now I'm gonna go have fun.
That's where I kind of think it's gonna lead. I'm expecting to see him in AEW by the end of the year. And I don't know exactly if he has like a 90-day no compete or if that's going to just end.
No, apparently the contract just ends tomorrow.
So, yeah, I can see that being the case then for maybe he pops up at All In. Maybe he pops up at All Out. Maybe he waits a little longer, heals up whatever nagging injuries he's got. I'll go on record as saying until something happens tonight, or obviously, 2 days from now or something, they end up having him, hey, I signed a new contract and here's me on Twitter announcing it or something. Keep all that in mind. But if they don't do any kind of a weird angle tonight that would set him up for a feud with anybody going forward, some kind of guarantee
or
of
just
like
him saying, hey, I'm done.
Yeah, or something along those lines, I'm going to hesitantly expect an AEW pop up at some point.
I'm going to wait until that moment that someone next week on Dynamite comes out and says that I need to have a match on the All In card. So I'm issuing an open challenge for anybody to face me at All In. And then if that happens, then I know that Edge is debuting in Wembley.
And then they end up being a disappointing thing, and it's like, well, look at that, it's Tony Nese or something.
I mean, if it's interesting because if it's fucking Christian doing it, then everybody's gonna assume.
Yeah. It would depend on who that person would be too, because if you end up having Parker Boudreaux come out and say something, it's not going to land as well. But for anybody who's like a big enough name that's not on the card right now, there could be plenty of different people that could end up having a call out for Edge. I mean,
the Hardys aren't on the card. Can Jeff Hardy go to Wembley?
I don't know. I don't know how that really works.
Because they're not on the card.
I mean, he could be a replacement for somebody. And let's get into some AEW stuff here, because we do have some stuff to talk about when it comes to backstage issues and where people are going to be going forward. We got the Punk thing and we got the Cash thing. Let's start with the Punk thing. Every time it seems like things are quieting down, bunch of megaphones start blaring. This week, there are 3 issues going on surrounding CM Punk that at least, I can kind of lump them in as these 3 separate issues. But as we've been saying before with the Punk stuff, sometimes things aren't exactly what you hear online. Sometimes it seems like both parties are at fault. Sometimes it seems like it's a misunderstanding. Sometimes it seems like people are acting like little babies and they should just grow the fuck up. It doesn't seem like a black and white issue for me. CM Punk has had issues with Ryan Nemeth, with the Elite continuing. There's the thing about Hangman Adam Page, and there's also this Jack Perry thing about using real glass. That's a lot for 1 week, revolving around one name being the center point.
Here's the frustrating thing. It didn't all happen this week.
But it all came out this week as like...
Yeah, because Punk did the thing at the end of Collision, not even at the end of Collision, after the show went off the air, where he made a snide remark about Hangman not being able to move any merchandise. And then suddenly it came out that, oh, did you know that Hangman had to shoot his promo somewhere else? And, oh, Punk has had Matt Hardy banned from Collision. And, oh, he doesn't want Daniels backstage, even though he's bad at talent relations, because if Ace Steel can't be in the...
he can't be in the arena. He has to do remote work.
Yeah, then why can't Chris Daniels? And look, all that shit is the most childish thing I've ever heard. But then you think about, hey, John Ross Sapp couldn't confirm that he had Hangman Page removed. PW Insider came out and said AEW has said to us that it had nothing to do with Punk. The promo was just being shot somewhere else.
Which sounds reasonable.
There was reports that he had apologized. He immediately, as soon as he realized that the promo on Hangman wasn't getting any kind of fun response, but it was actually getting people were really upset, he texted Hangman and apologized. I think that there is a contingency of people that want to swarm this idea that he's the devil, and in actuality, it's just he's a human being. He's a problematic human being, but he's a human being, and this shit happens, and everything. It all ended up by the end of it being kind of much ado about nothing. Because the Jack Perry thing with the glass, hey buddy, he doesn't want you using real glass. It's dangerous. He's trying to look out for your health. Take it easy. Like, it's okay.
If you take these things at face value, it's very frustrating because it's kind of like, look, I don't know any of these people personally. I'm not backstage and all that stuff. So, throw out all the allegedly grain of salt, blah, blah type of preamble. But like one story will come out and it's like the Ryan Nemeth thing, which sounds from my perspective like CM Punk was salty about Nemeth being like, what did he tweet? Something like the softest man alive.
Yeah, he retweeted someone saying that he was the softest man alive.
Which then it comes across to me as it's like, hey, why did you badmouth me? My feelings are hurt. And then another report comes out and it's like, oh, they potentially might have just had a regular discussion. And that's like, all right, well, that could be two different things then. So there's no way of like really getting into it. But if there's an issue with that, kind of seems like a little like, all right, grow up and get over it. Not everybody likes you. And then the Jack Perry thing will come out and it's like, you mean tell me this dude wanted to use real glass? No, you fucking idiot. I'm glad that there was a CM Punk there to be like, no, you fucking idiot, don't use glass, because nobody uses real glass unless you're in some kind of rinky-dink indie bullshit deathmatch type thing where you're smashing light tubes over everybody's head and you're inhaling all those toxic fumes. You use sugar glass in TV shows and movies and everything. That's safety. And that would be entirely like, yeah, I'd stand right next to CM Punk on that one and just be like, Punk's right about this. And then the elite thing's like, oh, is he cutting a promo because he's trying to take a shot? Or is he trying to work? Oh, are they trying to refuse to sit down and talk? Or is that completely made up bullshit? And like this back and forth of all this like bickering and all, it's exhausting. And it's very much like, if I were just working with the information that the internet has, and somebody were to be like, okay, you're in charge of commissioning some kind of judgment, you have to like punish somebody, I'd be like, okay, you're all at fault, you're all children, grow the fuck up, you're all wrong. You know what I mean? But that might not even be the case for any of these things. It's baffling.
And one personal thing on the Ryan Nemeth, I'm sick of the internet. I mean, and now we stand Ryan Nemeth, do we? Don't even give a fuck about whether or not Ryan Nemeth was on the TV show. And no, this isn't me saying I don't like Ryan Nemeth. I like Ryan Nemeth. I like everybody named Nemeth. I think Dolph Ziggler should go have a fun run in AEW too. But like,
he was on Being the Elite, apparently, right?
Yeah, he was on Being the Elite. But come the fuck on with this Ryan Nemeth. Like, oh, you care now? Because you couldn't shoot a match for Ring of Honor? Like, what? Shut up.
Yeah. Well, you know how people are when it comes to like, oh, there's a cause for me to get behind. Well, I've been the champion for that since I was before I was born. You know?
Any thoughts on CM Punk, Caleb?
It's just a lot of noise that comes up backstage every now and again surrounding him. As I say, there's never any smoke without fire, so he's definitely at the heart of a lot of issues like this. The Ryan Nemeth thing, yeah, it's a bit of a petulant behaviour if that is the case of him, like, you know, allowed on the show because of what he said about him. But then again, CM Punk's a star, and if you're a guy further down the pecking order, you don't make fun of a big star. Like, that is just a classic no move. Like, you wouldn't. I'm not saying he's his boss or anything like that, but you wouldn't badmouth your superior on Twitter, and if he comes across it, then you're probably going to eat shit for it. That's just the way the world works. And then you would the stuff with Hangman. It just seems like that is he does. I mean, he was very open in an interview that he did recently. I can't remember who it was
Sports Illustrated.
Sports Illustrated, where he basically said that he basically confirmed all the Ryan Nemeth stuff, but then said they had no idea why Matt Hardy and Hangman were not allowed in the building. So I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just a case of him like saying some things to make it seem like the other stuff is more genuine. There's always that kind of, you always have to look at that politics side of things, because CM Punk is a very good politician. So it could be a case of him saying, okay, because I revealed this thing, that means that because that I wasn't involved in that means it must be true. Which means, I don't know, you could just be telling the truth about one thing and lying about another one.
Yeah, I mean, look at the way that people sell you on almost everything in the world. They might be like, a good example, the medical things. It's just like the side effects might include these little things, but we're not going to talk about the big side effects, because really the good thing is here's all the great things that come along with our product, like.
Yeah, I think that obviously the Jack Perry thing leaves no explanation. If he was going to try and use real glass on the show, then somebody definitely should have said to him, no, you're fucking stupid. Don't you dare do anything like that. I'm not having you cause something that could be like seen as a serious incident, and maybe even like have like a lawsuit or something attached to it if you were to use it in the actual match. So yeah, move on. Do that, then quit your contract and go work on the indies, work for like CCW or AAA. I think AAA used light tubes recently, and actually a match involving Pentagon and QT Marshall had plenty of light tubes involved in that. So, but yeah, I think that I'd say this stuff follows him around a lot. I think there is clearly camps involved in this. That are leaking certain information at convenient times. I don't know where I stand in terms of like the media's reaction to this as well, because I don't know. It's gotten to the point with Punk that there's so many conflicted stories out there that it's kind of rendered as much as like I know there are certain people in the media that are more trustworthy than others, but it's kind of rendered all discourse surrounding him completely ambivalent. Like you don't know what to believe because there's so much out there. But certain people are saying one things, you don't know if certain people have an agenda, or certain people have heard things from other people that do have agendas, and so they're getting the information screwed up. Like it's
it's very easy to do that too. Like all you need to do is have somebody that is, it's not mince any words here. If the Elite still have issues with CM Punk, all it takes is one of them to say to somebody like a Meltzer, hey, this is what happened, and this is my spin on it. And then he reports it, and then that becomes a story. And it might not be 100% true. Or it could be the total opposite way. Or it could be just like the brawl out situation, where it seems like the more information that comes out, the more that it's like, yeah, that is what happened, but here's how the precursor was, and here's the consequence that fallout happened, and then that reconstitutes your context of everything, and then both sides are right and both sides are wrong, and it does make it hard for whether it's like a John Alba or a Sean Ross Sapp or anybody that's reporting on this to just be like, look, we don't know if any of this is real. You just kind of can you go with it? Here's the report.
I'd say that one thing that, at least from the observer perspective, they seem to have been the most vociferous and staunch in stance of the Elite and CM Punk still hate each other. There's still no, or at least there's still no communication there, and that there is no plans no one should be expecting a feud between them anytime soon on TV, because there's still no communication there. So they seem very, very staunch on that angle of it. So again, there's a lot of there's like so much conjecture out there. We just know that whenever CM Punk is around, sometime next week there's going to be a big news story about it. So
and it doesn't even seem like it has to be 100% him. It could be his buddies, because now we got to talk about Cash Wheeler. You see MFTR, seems like a lot following them. We talked quite a bit about Dax over the course of the past few months, and not as much about Cash, but today we got to talk about something that happened. He was arrested for an aggravated assault and firearm charge. Now, I'm finding out some more information here and there about like some different reports. I watched a little, the Orlando Sentinel, I think, report. I still haven't been able to find too much as far as specifics go, but it seems from what I've gathered that on July 27th, there was some sort of a quote unquote road rage incident involving Cash somewhere around the Orlando range, wherein he flashed his gun, and I don't know what else, because it seems like he would need to do something else to throw an aggravated assault charge into there. Now, of course, every state has their own different laws. Florida is a fucking Mad Max crazy Thunderdome scenario.
All it takes is a threat.
Yeah. You could speak to the Florida stuff more than I can about how insane it is, but like that changes some things around as far as like whether or not you can, carry a gun around in the same way and all. But this is putting that all-in match in jeopardy, and they're still continuing to advertise it, which if that happened July 27th, and this is something that they've been aware of for the past couple of weeks, I don't know if that's the smartest thing to do, because now they might end up just being like, okay, well, the FTR versus Young Bucks match isn't happening. Sorry, everybody. We waited until the last minute, and we knew that wasn't going to be the case.
Well, there are multiple things to this. So first of all, I'll take this quote specifically from Hanlon Law regarding what would it take to be charged with this kind of aggravated assault with firearm charges. It reads, Florida statute section 784.021 requires a prosecutor to prove beyond a reasonable doubt certain elements to obtain a conviction for aggravated assault. These are that the defendant intentionally and illegally threatened through words or acts to do violence to the alleged victim. The defendant appeared to be able to carry out this threat at the time. The threat created an alleged victim a reasonable fear that violence was about to happen, and the assault was made with a deadly weapon or a fully formed conscious intent to perpetrate a felony. And it's also apparently a maximum penalty for this charge is 5 years in prison or 5 years probation plus a $5,000 fine. And the firm notes that even first-time offenders can face jail time for this particular offence. So that's like definitely a long to future and something that he should definitely be worried about. I mean, there's a lot of, we don't know all the details because it just came out today about this stuff. The fact is that he wrestled 2 matches recently while in between this event happening and him putting himself forward for arrest, like giving himself up to the cops essentially. So I think that I would personally, and again, this is just speculation, of pure 150% speculation on this one particular, I think that he didn't tell anyone. Or he didn't tell anyone in a position of power in AEW about it. So, because if he did, he would have waited until after All In. But so I think that eventually, like, people caught up with him, and now this stuff's come out. Another point that needs to be mentioned here is that they have not taken his passport away, and there is no, as far as I've seen, no precedent to suggest that he could not travel to London for All In.
Yeah, I think
so that's the reason why they haven't said this match is off, because as far as they're concerned, it's not.
No.
I mean, they could have very easily just said, hey, the match isn't happening on what's like the nearest episode after July 27th. That would have been
Well, that's
the collision on the 29th. Yeah,
that's why he's saying he doesn't think that they told anybody.
Yeah, that's why I think that the company is finding out pretty much today.
It could very well be the case, yeah. And for him to just like give himself up and be arrested on these charges now could mess everything up. And I not to say that like, oh, you should have waited another week or something like that to just do it, but I mean, it's not just you that gets affected by this. It's your tag team partner, your people in the ring, the company you work for, and the fans that paid to see your match. And I don't know, don't fucking do these kind of things to begin with as well. That's another element to this.
Yeah, well, and that's the biggest thing that you have to take out of this as well. It's like with pretty much any situation this involves, don't threaten someone with a fucking handgun or do whatever it was the case. Again, we don't know the specifics about it, but all we can assume, based on the fact that this is the charge has been going on, that he was carrying a gun, he threatened someone in a road rage incident. That is probably, that is a very unsmart thing to do. And just again, it's baffling, and one of the reasons why I'll never ever go to America is that seemingly everyone is carrying a handgun in some capacity. It feels
well. Eventually, we're gonna have to meet you over there. Look,
just don't bring the handguns. That's fine. Just
I am flirty and I do not own a gun. for multiple reasons.
We better make sure you don't crash into him then at some point, because
that's the thing, is that they're all here, which is crazy. But I said this to Tony privately. Has it been like 2 years since this company's put on a show without the most drastic, upending circumstances fucking over these cards? Or at the very least, hanging a cloud above these cards to the point where the show itself is not the thing people are talking about? That's part of the shit here too, is it's like, man, they're going to Wembley. And this is like one of the matches that they had set in stone. And I do, for the record, think he's probably going to Wembley. I had the Young Bucks winning anyway, but now I really have the Young Bucks winning. Yeah, this sucks. And it kind of puts a damper on a lot of things. But, you know, I think everybody needs to just let the story play out instead of running to your Twitter.com or your X.com and suddenly being a legal expert. I just, it's an awful situation all the way around. I do take a little bit of solace in that it wasn't like a sick domestic thing. He's just a lunatic on Florida streets, maybe, and that's hey, dime a dozen.
I mean, if you want to toss out, it could be worse. Yeah, it could be worse, but at the same time,
is that essentially what I'm doing? A little bit. It's an awful situation, but when you hear wrestler and assault, your mind does the worst of the worst of the worst.
What's really sad that your mind goes again.
Yeah. So I had found out about this right after I was done crafting the tweet I mentioned earlier about how excited I would be to see Edge wrestle in AEW, and I'm like, ugh, well, there goes that. It seems like he did the right thing in terms of he turned himself in, right? Like it's not like he, was denying this and
tried to
go to the cops.
Cross over to Mexico and run away from it.
Yeah, I hope that it all works out, because FTR is a great tag team, and for their run to be cut short would suck, but also, don't fucking threaten people with a gun. Look, I know you want to be Arn Anderson in every way possible, FTR, but my God,
don't take all the inspiration
in the glove compartment, please.
Well, if they do end up either by force or just by trying to make sure that they cover their bases, taking him off the card, what would you guys like to see them do as an alternative? Would you rather Dax get a new partner for the match? Would you rather FTR gets replaced entirely and the Young Bucks go up against somebody else?
My God, it's the long con. This is how you get CM Punk in the ring with the Young Bucks. Look, honestly,
he throws himself on the sword for that.
Yeah, honestly, if they're not going to be able to be FTR, I would like the Young Bucks to just fight someone else, even if it's like, hey, if you got to throw something together real quick, the Guns can be champions, beat their old enemies FTR on Wednesday, and Bullet Club Gold and the Elite seem to be doing a rivalry. That might be an easy... listen, that's a huge downgrade for Wembley, but that might be an easy way storyline-wise. I've already talked about wanting to see Edge and Christian against the Guns, but we'll, Edge and Christian gets the Bucks, but we'll see where that goes. I just want the best possible outcome for the fans in Wembley, and obviously everybody to be safe, but it does appear in this case most people are safe.
I would say that if they do go with have to not follow through with the FTR match and have to kick them off the card, I would say that you should vacate the titles on Collision. Just literally come out and say, I did a shitty thing and I'm going to go away for a while because of it, and so we're having to drop the tag titles. And so what you do instead, or what I would do, is you've already got a tag team match booked in on the 0 hour between Aussie Open and MJF and Adam Cole. Yeah. So you just say the winner of that match not only wins the Ring of Honor tag title, but they also advance to later in the night to face the Young Bucks for the AEW Tag Team Championship.
And then you think you would probably go with Aussie Open?
Oh, well, I'd go with Aussie Open winning in any regard. But yeah, I thought, I think, well, again, we're not doing predictions just yet, but I think it's a pretty safe bet they're not going to lose the Ring of Honor titles on 0 Hour. So,
and then you just do Aussie Open in the Bucks and hope that they can pull double duty and have a really good night.
Oh yeah, like they're saying, like I think Aussie Open at the moment are one of the best tag teams in the world, so they could definitely pull another great match out of the Bucks, even if they had to have a good match prior to it as well. I think they could do double duty. It would be, again, it's a little bit of a weird scenario, but I think that they would be able to do it. But I think the most likely scenario still is that FTR are going to go to All In. It's pretty obvious what the result is going to be now. But yeah, I think that'll just be the case, and then they'll go away for a little bit, or at least Cash will go away for a little bit. I think there needs to be some kind of internal repercussions for this, or at least company repercussions for Cash for this, especially if he did subvert the fact that he'd been arrested earlier for it, or like not given the full details about it. But I think that, yeah, so he probably should be in a perfect world, and we don't live in a perfect world. In a perfect world, he would be off. He'd be not be allowed to wrestle on the Wembley show because that's a pretty big show, and like he's sullied his opportunity to do it by drawing more negative press towards AEW. But the fact of the matter is, we live in a world where wrestling is seedy, and they know that it's still a big match to put on the Wembley show, so they're going to do it anyway.
Now, it is fair to mention, AEW has shown in the past that they don't play with legal matters. They handled Hardy pretty swiftly.
It's slightly different scenario.
It is slightly different in this one, but it's, you know,
I think for and excuse the pun, but I think they're going to need to bite the bullet on this one. And which maybe Cash should have done, and then he wouldn't be in this issue as well. But I think that, yeah, I think they just need to go ahead with it because it's too close to time to change the advertised thing. People are already shitting on this card as it is, to the point where like people saying like, "Oh my god, what the fuck they think they're doing putting this show together?" Which I think, you know, this is a pretty good card, but it's like, it's not perfect, but I think people are being like a bit OTT about how negative they're approaching this. But then if you just take one of the bigger matches off of that show, then people are really going to get quite a negative perception towards it. You know, and no, it's a balancing act. There might be more people that say that you have to do it because more people will be upset about the fact that they're going to let this guy wrestle on Wembley after what he did. But, you know, it's all business at the end of the day. I don't want to defend it, but like, I've seen it enough times happening in other wrestling promotions that I wouldn't be surprised they did it here as well.
Well, what other teams do they have that are around that they could potentially just slot in
they're
here?
Not gonna, I mean, they're not going to move. Look, the best choice would be Bullet Club Gold, and by that I mean Juice and Jay.
Yeah.
They would have a great match with the Bucks, and they could have won the tag titles earlier on this year anyway when the matches with FTR. So, but obviously that would completely derail the trios match you've got booked already on that show. So the other tag teams would be, you've already got Swerve and Fox against Sting and Darby, so they're both out of the commission there.
BCC's booked, the Lucha Bros are booked.
Yeah, you're not going to do, Best Friends are booked. You're not going to do the Guns again, because they just had the Guns versus the Young Bucks on this episode of Dynamite, and it was fine, but it wasn't that great of a match. You're probably not going to do Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal. You could do the Hardys again, but again, that's something you've just done recently, so be really going to retread it. If Edge is available, you could just say chuck in Christian. Christian says, I'm going to fight. Because Christian and Luchasaurus are not booked for that show. So you can either go with the Luchasaurus thing, or Christian says, hey, manage to find a different partner and it's Edge instead, and then the whole crowd goes crazy, and then you've almost elevated it beyond that point. That's one scenario where they can actually enhance it.
That's why, you know, obviously in a perfect world, yada yada. Like that's why that's the thing I'd go to, because if you're going to take this match off, preferably if you take any match off, you should be trying to elevate it. But if you're going to take this match off, gotta elevate it.
And that's the only way to do it, in which case you should just throw as much money as Edge ever wanted in his life at him to make sure that he does get that, you do get that match. Because I believe that's the only way to elevate, because otherwise you're looking at teams like 2.0, like Sammy Guevara and Daniel Garcia, maybe. Like, I don't know, got Brian Cage and Big Bill, the Gates of Agony, stuff like that. So a lot of good tag teams, but nobody that has the influence or drawing power of FTR, and nobody that will elevate that match beyond what it would have otherwise been. So, yeah, the only option if you want to do it higher is pay Edge whatever he wants and get into Team of Christian on the show. But that's pretty much it.
And then you just, honestly, you let the fucking Edge and Christian, the two wily veterans, work around the Young Bucks. And I think at that point, nobody's thinking about Cash Wheeler with a gun.
It sounds so funny on there.
It's true. I mean, it sounds ridiculous. I understand, but it's true.
Wheeler's got a gun kind of thing. So we aren't going to know what's happening until, of course, after the hot tags, because the most that they're going to say anything would probably be Rampage tonight, but more than likely Collision tomorrow, or maybe not even until Dynamite next week, or maybe not even until after that. I don't know.
You're going to have to say something by Collision.
Probably, but they might get away with the Rampage thing, not saying something. In any fashion, we will address the differences, if there are any differences to the card, when we get into the AEW All-In predictions that are going to be doing the pay-per-view point on I'll probably try to do that on Thursday, most likely, because we'll probably wait until after Dynamite before we do that. But we'll get to that, and we do still have two more things to talk about here. One of them being, if we're talking on the AEW side of things, we're talking about the TV stuff, because you know how we're kind of switching it up a little bit here. We're not going to talk about every little thing. One of the major things that happened in AEW television this week was this whole Texas Chainsaw Massacre death match between Jeff Hardy and Jeff Jarrett. And, you know, it evokes RoboCop and WCW vibes for me, where Leatherface comes out and all. We know why they did this. They got paid handsomely for it. And AEW is, you know, following what WWE's done in the past and what they continue to do. We've had the Mountain Dew Pitch Black match. We've had the look at the whole Winter is Coming. That name is because it's a tie-in with Game of Thrones, and that's, you know, a Warner kind of thing. I don't blame them for doing something along these lines, but I do not know why this was necessarily the way that it was on here. I didn't see all of it. I'll say that. I missed a good portion of Dynamite this week, and I haven't gone back to check it out yet, but I was pretty confused when I turned on, or when I was paying attention, and I was like, oh, Karen Jarrett's completely covered in blood, and oh, Jeff Jarrett's completely covered in blood, and what did I miss that this happened? Oh, it's fake blood. Okay, well, what's happening with this? And then, you know, Leatherface is out there doing something, and I'm not a Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan. I'll say that. I know that that's flying in the opposite direction of my wife loving horror films, but not my favorite thing I've seen in AEW. I'll say that.
I want to start with the positives. It's very honorable that they donated all of the money to the Maui Food Bank, and I commend them for doing so. Callum, what were you saying earlier about it being TNA?
Well, Jeff Jarrett's involved in this one, so of course.
This was a bit much for me. Like, it was fine, right? Like, it was fine, but it was all right. I don't know if we need this. What's happening here? Like, it's silly. It was silly, but whatever. Like, both of their careers are still well intact. is just silly.
I think I would fundamentally say that this can't appear, morally, it cannot appear in any of my Worst of the Year awards because they gave all that money to the Maui situation. So fundamentally, no matter how bad the match was, it was all for a fantastic cause. So that just counteracts all of it. It's like it's now a net positive in that respect. Ignoring that, yeah, it's bad, really bad. I think that like it's one of those ones that it's bad it's bad like across the board, like it's just completely bad. But it's that kind of bad that some people will find really entertaining, and some people just think that it's the worst thing they've ever seen on screen. And I don't know where I kind of sit on it because there's bits of it that I find funny, but for the most part, it is just some really really hammy acting and crazy shit. And I'd probably say that it would. I don't know whether it would have been more jarring or less jarring had the rest of the show not already been pretty weird in places. So it's kind of, I don't know whether that helped it, made it feel like it was a bit more fit in, or whether it was just that just made it like the worst part of an already weird show. So yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of it having the Jeff Jarrett having a Leatherface title belt as well.
Yeah, that belt. I don't know what the hell was going on with that.
I will at least give it this, that it was better than the glow in the dark Mountain Dew Kickstart match from the Royal Rumble this year.
High bar they just cleared there.
Yeah.
It's not saying much, but it was better than that.
Both having some weird endings too. Like Leatherface is just walking around for this one, and then the Pitch Black match has what is he calling himself? Boy Howdy. Uncle Howdy. I'm coming that with Bo Dallas. Boy Howdy. Him doing that awful fucking jump where he missed LA Knight. And yeah, this is one of the TV things that I just wanted to bring up because, hey, look at that. It's very interesting. It's obviously much more to talk about than like Britt Baker clearly was going to beat the bunny and she did,
I thought the convoluted way in which they got to Chris Jericho saying that Chris Jericho and Don Callis fighting was a bit much, but I understand. Like, I'm thinking of Jericho just being like, "You got to do it like this because they won't see it coming," but in reality, it's like, bro, why were you so convinced that your friend was gonna say no to you that you had a whole ass painting commissioned that you were holding his head? Wasn't my favorite thing, but I like where this is going. I think Jericho and Ospreay will be fun as long as he doesn't say the words Painmaker.
Oh God, please don't do that next week. Don't do the whole like, you know what, I'm gonna bring the pain to you, and we don't need to see Painmaker. Just have Jericho be Jericho.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'll say that much. Stadium Stampede is a nice surprise. Heck, Callum, you're gonna be in the building for a Stadium Stampede match.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how that works in like on a live setting. To be fair, it might actually be more easy to follow than it is on TV because of the camera work that goes from like 6 different bits of action happening. I'm curious to see what the 3 people BCC choose. My mind is pointing towards at least one of them being Shota Umino because that just makes sense. He's like the auxiliary member of BCC.
He's filled in like pretty much every scenario where they've needed an outsider.
I think it's Shooter, Ishii, and Garcia.
I think Ishii would be weird. Like him joining up with BCC after teaming with like Kingston. Like he fought BCC at the Forbidden Door.
That's true. Maybe I'm mixing up how Ishii normally fills in here.
Yeah, I'd say it's going to be like in a perfect world. I think one of them is going to be Shota. I think it's Shota, and I think the other one is another one is going to be Daniel Garcia. Just like his full induction in it. And then in a dream scenario, well, there's multiple dream scenarios. One is somehow Bryan Danielson has miraculously recovered to the degree that he could have this kind of walk and brawl type match. Like not a proper match, but a walk and brawl thing. Nigel McGuinness is a big dream scenario if he is like, as there seemed to be at least speculation that he wanted to fit Danielson or match at this show. So if they could pull him in as well, he kind of fits the Blackpool Combat Club aesthetic.
That'd be pretty cool.
He would have a lot of work to do, though. Like, have him turn heel real quick, and suddenly he's so mad that he's going to beat the fuck out of them all over Wembley.
Maybe they've overheard about the Jack Perry glass thing, and they're like, let's bring him in.
He just doesn't show up, really. He doesn't need to be. He's already a heel. He's already the heel commentator on Collision.
That is true, isn't it?
So he just needs to show up on this show and just say, yeah, I'm going to just go out and beat the fuck out of these people. And then there's a guy backstage by the name of Chris Hero.
Yeah, I keep calling for that one.
Who has ties to a certain member of the Blackpool Combat Club that they might decide to, hey, you're not doing anything on this show in particular. Why not? You get one match back and it's going to be on the biggest show in front of the biggest crowd in modern wrestling history. So I think that could be a pretty tempting offer to him to come and lace the boots up one more time.
I'd agree with that.
There's a lot of options. I mean, you've got assuming it wouldn't be Shibata because Shibata's on the side of Orange Cassidy, but he's kind of got that aesthetic. There's a lot of guys from Ring of Honor that kind of work that shoot style that you might want to pull in. But, and as I say, it's added a bit of curiosity into next week, because presumably they'll announce who those people will be, or at least two of them, and save the other one as a surprise for Wembley if they want to. But, yeah, that was a pretty cool wrinkle to add into it. Talk about the Jericho thing. I think they tried to rekindle some of the magic of the Festival of Friendship in that segment. It certainly was not of that caliber. And it's one of those weird things where Jericho didn't turn babyface, but he was kind of compelled to turn babyface in the sense that he agreed with Don Callis and was about to go with him, but then Don Callis's idiocy, because he just assumed that Jericho was going to refuse, meant that he commissioned this painting, which then caused Jericho to call him out and get attacked by Takeshita and then Will Ospreay. I don't know why people are so mad about this match being named as well. They almost feel like, oh, is this the best you can do for Ospreay? What, facing one of the most celebrated wrestlers of all time in like a huge stadium? Yeah, I think Ospreay would be pretty happy about that.
I think that those people are just like, I wanted the Omega match, which is like, it's happening at fucking Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah,
it's not even that. It's people don't like Jericho for a multitude of reasons that probably have nothing to do with his character on TV. And they're just so mad that he's on the show. And it's like, it's Chris fucking Jericho. Last year, he had one of his best runs ever. If you bring that guy to Wembley, I'll watch this match.
Well, people forgetting like the matches he had this year. He had that match with Ricky Starks earlier this year that was great. He had a match with Bandito on TV that was great. His match with Commander was probably the best Commander match he's had on AEW so far. So Jericho can still go, and Ospreay can carry people. I saw him. Kenta fucking sucks nowadays. Like, he is just a broken shell of what he used to be, and he carried Kenta to a 4-star match in the G1. So, like, Ospreay has this handled. Like, he is going to pull out the best match that Jericho's had in the last 5 to 10 years out of him in Wembley. So I'm going to, I could pretty much, I don't 100% guarantee it, but I'm pretty confident of that assumption. So yeah, I think that this is a good match to have on the card, in spite of other people's criticisms of it.
This is one of the few matches that just flat out makes sense to me, as far as if you look at the card and you go, all right, at face value, what are we getting here? This is like, yeah, okay, I get it. Jericho's a huge name, and Ospreay's, like, I don't see any issues with that at all. To me, what doesn't make any sense, and we'll get into it with some of the other things, are like, some of the other matches where it's just sort of like, all right, we're throwing, all right, now we're doing that. Okay, the tag team coffin thing, I'm like, I already said before, I'm not the biggest fan of that angle, but like, I would have thought that Nick Wayne would have been involved in that. And like, like the different things, like those decisions are the ones that stand out to me more than Jericho Ospreay. That's like, it's a no-brainer.
I will say I'm less invested in that angle now that Nick Wayne is just fine. And just wrestling on TV, because he just wrestled a tag match and won a tag match this week with Darby Allin. So it's like, I was more interested in like the blood feud side of this angle, when it was like you were avenging the guy that you were training or the guy that, like, one of your friends that had been beaten up and put on the shelf for a little while. It's like, no, he's totally fine. And now Joker Sting is back as well.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Joker Sting, but again, we'll talk about some more of that stuff when we get into the All-In predictions. Let's backtrack, talk about the one thing, I guess, that happened on Monday Night Raw that's worth really talking about, because there's some things they continued to tell the story of. You know, JD McDonough is still continuing to hang around the Judgment Day and working his way potentially into that group. Zoe Stark and Trish Stratus, Becky Lynch and Trish Stratus had a double count out. They're going to have a steel cage match, which seemingly is going to happen at Payback.
It was announced on Main Event, by the way, which to explain why nobody knows that yet. Yeah,
because does that show even exist? Who knows? Piper Niven, though, just popped up and said, "I'm your new tag team partner for Chelsea Green."
The right move. Which is the right move.
I don't know if I would say that this is my absolute favorite move. It's one of the options we were talking about before that I'm down for Piper Niven being like the heavy of the group and like doing all the work, and Chelsea being the annoying person that gets the pin and all that stuff. But I think that they really dropped the ball with the idea that as soon as they announced Chelsea being like, oh, what if I do this Chelsea's Got Talent thing and I try to make a talent show to figure out my new tag team partner, their response is to immediately just go, nope, it's Niven. And I'm just like, shit, you didn't want to play with that for even one episode? You didn't want to have like 2 backstage segments where somebody goes around and it's like, oh, you know, well, I don't want to have Dana Brooke as my partner because she's losing, and then we can continue that story with NXT. Or maybe Nikki Cross wants to do that and she's like, well, no, she's crazy. I don't want to have her as my partner. I don't want to be around somebody who's nuts. You got a 3-hour show, and so much of episodes of Raw are just like, hey, remember earlier tonight we saw this backstage segment where Finn Balor was annoyed. Let's go back and watch the same backstage segment again. And it's like, okay, I get it. You're telling 27 minutes worth of Cody's going to fight Finn. Man, fucking try to do something more than just, yeah, it's Piper. Shut up.
I'm not gonna knock how they did it, because I'm just glad that they did this. That could have been something else. It annoyed me that she was like, well, I got an idea, Chelsea's Got Talent, because it felt like a throwback to like 10 years ago where they refused to acknowledge social media and the fact that she's been doing Chelsea's Got Talent, and even Mick Foley sent in a fucking video being like, hey, I'll be your partner. Hey, pick me. Like, it felt weird to be out there just like, I have an idea. This thing I've been doing all weekend on Twitter. Very strange. But Piper's back, which is cool. Chelsea stays on TV, which is good for me in my fantasy league points. And this feels like the best of a bad situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with Tony that they definitely could have stretched this angle out a little bit more to actually maybe get some interest in the tag team division, the women's tag team division, by having Chelsea use her considerable charisma to make this angle work. But yeah, I can't say that the outcome is the wrong one. I think it's probably the right outcome in the end of the day. But yeah, they definitely could have made more out of it than what they ended up doing.
Yeah, I'm disappointed in how that worked, because I was just like, well, you know, very rarely do you have the option of doing some sort of, not necessarily just doing something different, but the idea of like, okay, well, you can take a bad thing and you can spin it into something good and give some character work, and you can build on an injury and a problem by creating story out of it. And you don't even have to do that much work for it. The Got Talent thing would have taken care of a lot of itself, because I'm sure a lot of other people would have come up with ideas, and then you just go, sure, yeah, do that. You know, hey, there's a fun idea that Indy Hartwell brought up or something, whatever the case may be. But it annoys me when WWE says, yeah, we've got a lot of options here and we don't want to do anything with it. Instead, we want to spend our time just dragging things through the mud and just stretching it out when we don't need to anymore. And I wasn't a fan of a lot of what happened on Raw. Like, to be honest, I'm not digging the way that they keep teasing Imperium is going to break up. I don't think that that's a necessary angle that needs to be going on right now, especially if they potentially aren't going to. I don't want them to break up to begin with, and I don't want them to just, maybe they will, and now they won't. Either scenario, I don't want it to happen. So just stop doing that and spend that time on something else, more fun. But I'm not the biggest fan of the whole situation with Becky Lynch and Trish and dragging that out. I thought that should have ended months and months ago.
Absolutely right move.
To drag it out even more?
Because you got a show in like 9 nights that what the fuck do you have for it?
I mean, that's the problem with Payback is that they're not doing shit for that. But I think that this Becky and Trish thing has lost steam a long time ago, and it's like, really, do you really need to set up the whole Mania thing to have a big payoff at Payback in August? You know,
it's not good. It feels like it fell off the wagon a long time ago. They have beat this Becky Lynch lemonade thing into the ground. That's
already stupid. Yeah,
like that. I don't know why that's the one thing from WWE this week that's kind of gone up my ass the wrong way, but.
Again, that's their thinking of like, well, let's try to do as much as we can with this, and then we don't do anything with the Chelsea situation. It's like
put
a lot of investment in the.
She was legitimately upset about the fact that she was not on SummerSlam. We're just gonna turn it into a bit. Here's all this lemonade stuff. It's like, I don't care. It was a comment on how shitty the booking for the women has been for such a long time. I don't care. You know, the match itself was what it was. I know Callum had mentioned previously that he wasn't a big fan of how that went. Yeah, this is off the rails, but they might as well take it to Payback and put it in a cage.
Yeah, I will say that my pick, obviously, I don't watch the shows live, and my interest was kind of piqued by some of the clips that I saw out on Twitter from the match, mainly the botched head scissors attempt, which I think they had to do like twice and didn't even get it properly right the second time. Yeah, I think that this kind of adds a lot of justification as to why this wasn't on the SummerSlam card. I will always be the one that backs the horse of I'd rather have a good match with no story rather than a bad match with tons of story pumped into it on a pay-per-view. So I think that them dragging it out it makes sense in the sense that you don't have anything to pay back, and so you probably want to put something together, and this has been a long-built story, but it also carries the negative association of, well, you keep saying you're going to have this match, and then you did have this match, now you're dragging it out for longer, so why should I care at that point?
Mm-hmm.
It's just the ongoing thing of, okay, if you keep promising that this match is going to happen, you've already moved it from the show where everyone expected it to happen to 2 weeks later, and then you still decided to drag it out even longer. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to most fans because they're still going to tune in every week and they don't really care about this stuff. But in a world where all things should be equal, more people should be put off about seeing future matches, or at least buying into a lot of promises WWE make about what's on the card and what's going to happen, because inevitably it's all going to go, well, I say inevitably, but in a lot of cases it goes in a direction which people aren't either happy about or expected.
And I'll say this, of course, we'll get into the Payback stuff closer to Payback, but it's right around the corner. If this is just like, Becky wins, and then and it'll be like, you couldn't have done that 3.5 months ago. You couldn't have done that. I don't know. At least at SummerSlam.
Just fuck off.
Yeah, I'm expecting Lita to be a part of this, but then again, that makes a little too much sense.
Like, for a while now, why did Lita just fuck off? I don't understand.
So finally, let's get to NXT with the predominantly just Heatwave predictions because there's not really too much to happen on NXT this week that we really need to talk about. Dana Brooke lost the match and she got all pissy afterward, and, you know, so on and so forth. Debacato was coming soon and then popped up like 6 minutes later or whatever it was. Yeah.
What? Did I miss that entirely? Was I pissing during that? What happened there?
He interrupted the Tyler Bate and Joe Coffey match.
Oh shit! I did not know that.
Yeah, that's why it was a no contest. He just attacked them both. He was just like, you know, I'm big and a lot of other people aren't.
Weird.
I hope he cuts a promo when he says that at some point. We got some things that are heading into Heatwave, like, you know, Rhea and Dominic issued a challenge, so we'll talk about that. But Baron Corbin talking a little bit about the Braun Breaker and Von Wagner stuff. We got a hard-hitting home truths. I don't like that thing with Nathan Fraser and all. Contract signing. Woo! You gotta love when people sign papers. And the continuation of... what's that?
The fraud button tickled me.
We got the Thea Hale continuation with the frustrations of Chase University and all. Or Andre Chase. She's not really got an issue with Duke Hudson. But... where the lineup right now for Heatwave is currently Ivy Nile against Ava Raine, which I don't care to see. I'm assuming Ava Raine wins that, but this whole...
Is this her first singles match, or have I forgotten that already?
I think she wrestled one other singles match.
Did she fight Thea?
I think that might have been on TV. Let me double check about that, but it wasn't long. She hasn't wrestled much time in general. Double check about that real quick, but I'm pretty sure that might have been the Thea Hale thing.
I'm not gonna lie. For a developmental company, she's one of the only wrestlers feels like they're going through the full cycle of development, and there's worse people to be on my television screen. So
it wasn't, I guess, according to a cage match.
Was it a mixed tag?
She had the mixed tag. It was her and the Dyad against the Creed brothers and Ivy. That was in early June.
Yeah, so this is her first singles match. That's important. That's a big step for her.
I'm still not anticipating that it's going to go long. I'm still not anticipating that it's going to be anything like good and whatever.
I want to, real quick, why the fuck did they do an angle with the Creed brothers where they have to leave NXT? You didn't have a plan for them to leave NXT. Like, why did you do that? And then how stupid are they for not trying to be on the main roster? They want to just hang around the fucking performance center, I guess. They just fuck with Schism. For what? For what reason? It's infuriating. As someone who has to watch this show, very annoying.
Yeah, I'm not feeling that. It's not my favorite thing on this card, but we do have a couple other matches. The more important ones that they're being advertised right now. They kind of snuck in that Ivy Nile one at the last second. But we've got Von Wagner versus Baron Corbin, with the idea in mind that Von Wagner's gimmick now is, I'm going to put you through a table. So that's essentially what everybody's going to be waiting for, is when, or if and when, Von Wagner is going to put Baron Corbin through a table. I'm anticipating that Wagner is going to lose and that Braun Breaker is going to come out and interfere in some fashion, because we did get, even though we got that like Baron Corbin and Braun Breaker tease, Breaker did say he's not finished with Wagner. So makes sense for a heel to interfere. Corbin gets the win. Touts that he's like, oh, I beat the big guy and all.
He's on a weird one where he's like, yeah, fuck this brand and fuck the people back there, and you're all crybabies and I hate you.
Yeah, I like it. Any prediction on that?
Yeah, I would assume Breaker wins. I wonder if they have Breaker be like the understudy of Corbin, for lack of a better word.
I don't think so, but you know, I mean,
wouldn't be the worst. Maybe.
Yeah, I could see that potentially working. especially because Braun Breaker's not doing anything anymore. Maybe he's going to change his name to Braun Corbin. Baron Breaker. We got a mixed tag match. Rhea Ripley and Dominic Mysterio are going to go up against Lyra Valkyria and Dragon Lee. This sounds about as textbook as you can get. Follow up what they did before, move on afterward. Maybe Dragon Lee gets a pin over Dominic to kind of offset that he didn't get to pin him before. And that's their way of like, well, he beat Dominic in that fashion, but then let's move on because Mustafa Ali is now doing this, like, campaigning for a North American Championship shot, kind of assuming that we're going to get Mustafa Ali against Dominic Mysterio going forward, and Dragon Lee is not going to be in that North American title scene. But they could just easily have Rhea Ripley beat Lyra and just be like, all right, hey, she never really wrestles anymore. Let's have her get a win and move on from the Dragon Lee and Valkyria stuff. I'm going to go Dominic and Rhea on that.
I think Dragon Lee wins. I think the end goal has to be Dragon Lee beats Dominic because Rhea Ripley wasn't there, as Lyra called out 2 weeks ago. And I want Mustafa Ali to go up against Dragon Lee so that he wins. If he goes up against Dominic, he's not going to beat him. So I want Mustafa Ali to win. And I think that's the way to get there. Ultimately, though, this is one of the things I'm more apathetic about.
I couldn't be more apathetic about Nathan Fraser against Noam Dar for the Heritage Cup. That trophy needs to go away. And this feud is not good. And I don't care who wins.
I'm never apathetic when the metaphor is on television.
Well, it's for one reason in particular. But yeah, I don't care if Dar wins. I like Dar more than a lot of other people do, but I don't care about him just winning that trophy and doing the same gimmick anymore. Nathan Fraser is a boring champion. Sorry, he's talented in some ways and all. That's cool, but this hard-hitting home truth thing is not fun to me. And this feud,
Collins alone. What is wrong with you?
The British round rules thing isn't even something that I'm the biggest fan of. So this is a total wash for me. It doesn't matter who wins, but I'm gonna say that Fraser retains.
I'm gonna go with Dar wins. I like Dar. And I like metaphor.
We got Ilya Dragunov against Trick Williams. The idea behind this being Trick needs to prove himself by beating Dragunov because he's going to tame the Mad Dragon. Dragunov is just sort of like, well, I got a beard now and I'm a heel, sort of, so fuck you, pal. And
I don't see it in Trick Williams yet. Maybe I'll be wrong. I'm just a guy who watches the TV show. Yada yada. There's your disclaimer. I wouldn't hate seeing Dragunov just beat the crap out of him.
I think Trick's got a lot of upsides to him, but he does still need some more time in NXT. Or at least he needs to learn more on the main roster if they were to move him up. And, he's not fully baked yet. And
Dragunov is good, though.
Dragunov's reached a point that I don't think he's going to change. Like, this is as good as we're going to get Dragunov. So I'd be fine with him losing here to put over Trick and kind of move that forward. I'd be fine with Dragunov winning here and then officially turning heel and maybe something coming out of that. But I don't really know what else to do with Dragunov in NXT.
He's gonna fight Eddie Thorpe because Eddie Thorpe also has matches that are hard hitting, so they'll get one out of those two. Then eventually he'll go up because not much room for him to go, and he can be a guy you throw in Fatal 4-Ways and Money in the Banks, where he'll do fun things.
Well, Thorpe and Dijak don't have a spot on this card, at least not yet. They might end up being the case, but I'm thinking that they're pushing that until the next week. Dijak lost the number one contenders match, which means Wesley has the title shot against Carmelo Hayes. And I'll give Wesley credit, man. He did a good enough job selling the idea of, look, everybody thinks that I'm going to lose and I have lost quite a bit, but I've won quite a bit. And every time that somebody says, well, you're not going to be a tag team champion. Then I was a tag team champion. I lost my tag team partner. You can't break out into singles. Then I became North American champion. Did a good job with that. He sold me on that, but at the same time, no fucking way he loses. Carmelo Hayes loses to Wesley. Lee's going to come up short here.
Yeah. They got nothing to say other than that.
I don't know what their plan is for how to transition that into No Mercy. But I will say this. I do not want to see Wesley puts up a really good shot and he comes up short. But hey, you know what? In a couple weeks, we've got No Mercy. Let's do the rematch. I don't want this to be a trend where NXT does the match before the pay-per-view.
Dragunov deserves another match. He hasn't lost. He didn't lose fair and square.
I don't want to see the Dragunov Hayes again either.
It was fun. At least that was fucking good. What are the other options? Trick Williams turns? No, thank you.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see that happen quite yet. So
yeah, exactly. So you shut up and take the Dragunov match. It's the best option.
I could see this being one of those pay-per-views where, you know, in the next couple of weeks, they end up just going, shit, let's do a 4-way or something. But maybe they do have a plan about what they're going to do afterward. Maybe somebody's going to come out and attack Hayes or something. I don't know. But I think that Heatwave coming back as a TV special is totally fine, rather it being a pay-per-view. And, you know, should be a better episode than some weeks. Should have some matches that probably fall short.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the NXT side. I know that Callum tends not to watch as much of the NXT. That's why I was skipping you.
Thing, and he wouldn't have had more energy than we had. So there you go.
And then SmackDown tonight's the Edge thing, and then some other kind of just, you know, filler segments and whatnot. Grayson Waller had a fun thing about the Philly. You know, the tickets for WrestleMania went on sale. They had a whole group of people go there to check out an Eagles game. And I saw a fun tweet of him with a masked person. He's like, yeah, I already met Rey Mysterio. He's taller in person. You know, Grayson Waller is good at that kind of stuff. But
speaking of Rey Mysterio, we should at least acknowledge you won the United States title. That was a thing that happened.
Yeah, that happened last week. The whole switch over, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I don't know if their plan was Rey Mysterio to begin with, and then he got that injury during the match, so then they figured let's just hit the reverse button and do what we were going to do anyway. But I would not have gone with Rey being the next champion over Santos or LA Knight, that's for sure. And kind of assuming now that Rey Mysterio won that belt, that means that Santos Escobar is going to turn heel and win it from him
down the line, but not right away.
Not like, you know, this week, but could be Grayson Waller. Maybe they just want to have Rey as a transition champion. Grayson Waller wins the title from him and all. I did see an interesting thing that said Rey Mysterio, I should say, and Goldberg are the only two people that have won a title in WCW that they can check off a modern title reign.
Right.
Which is like,
still counts.
Right. It's interesting.
You know, like, it's cool. He obviously wasn't meant to go in the Hall of Fame this year. But
yeah, we established that for sure.
he's having a good run. I don't hate it. I wonder if Austin Theory is just going to fall off the face of the earth. That's what I'm wondering.
I mean, they dropped the ball with him. We've said it before. I don't know what their plan is, but if they have a plan, it's failing. If they don't have a plan, well, no wonder he's in the situation that he's in. Yeah. So those are the hot tags that I got written down. Maybe we're forgetting something. Maybe something else that pops up in the meantime. And
we're reading this MJF tweet on the air.
What MJF tweet?
The one that Callum put in the Skype chat. Kind of disappointed how many dorks there are on this app that jump to conclusions so quick. A ton of people's privileges showing. We're all human. We're all flawed. We all make mistakes. Take it from a guy who's made more mistakes than most. I've had my ups and downs with FTR, but Cash Wheeler is a great dude and a badass. You're getting FTR versus the Young Bucks in front of 80,000 plus people on August 27th. Talk about that, you dweebs. And I kind of agree with that because, as I said, like, I don't like that my whole timeline turned into legal experts all of a sudden. Just enjoy it.
I mean, if he is trying to say that means there's not going to be any issues, the match is going forward, then that's a whole nother thing going on there. If that's just, we assume that it's going to be going forward, everybody should stop speculating until you hear an official announcement type of thing. That's another thing. I don't know. I love MJF going off on things, though.
Yeah. Man.
So any last thoughts from any other topics we got going on? I don't think that there's anything else. I'm trying to look around, see if maybe something else broke, but nothing coming to mind.
No, I can't see anything that's breaking news. Hey, Zelina Vega and Dakota Kai have a podcast coming. Yippee.
What's it called?
It's going to be called Zeldex and Charlie Girl. I guess that's like their Twitch streamer name, so I'm guessing it'll be more of a like game generated podcast. I like the idea. It's just, you know, another podcast that I'm kind of salty about. But the idea is cool enough.
Alrighty, well, drop your thoughts in the comments below about all these hot tags, and of course, if anything else happens, we will talk about that over the course of the next few days leading into the next round of the hot tags. We will talk about AEW All In with our predictions on the pay-per-view point coming up next week. Maybe some other stuff in the meantime, I don't really know. We did a Darkcast. Go ahead back and check that out for the Heat of the Moment tournament and for a bunch of new games that Callum had created for Play the Game. That was a really fun addition of that. We probably have another one of those coming up pretty soon, but I'm not entirely sure yet. We're going to work out what's happening with Marco on the Pick Your Poison. And if you want more of anything in particular, the Pick Your Poison is the best way to do it. So hop on over to the Patreon, go on a YouTube channel membership, and take advantage of that. Sponsor something directly in whatever fashion that it might be that you are interested in. And make sure that you are clicking around on all the other stuff that you normally should do. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at SmarkOutMoment. Make sure you are going over to fanboysanonymous.com, liking, sharing, following, favoriting, subscribing to those things over there. YouTube.com/fanboysanonymous. Still waiting on having that hidden strike thing with John Cena reinstated. It's coming around the time frame where it's probably going to be back up pretty soon. But if you want to show your support for that, go to the Patreon and such over there. Check out the Blueprint Project. I've mentioned that before a million times. If you don't know what it is, drop a comment below. I'll explain it more. And make sure you're going over to the link tree over on amangotree.com. You'll find links to all sorts of different things there, including my personal accounts at Tony Mango.
And you can follow me on Twitter, on Instagram, on Twitch, on everything at Dude Police. There will be more content coming from me at some point, I'm sure, with dudepolice.com and dudepolice on YouTube. I just referred to myself that way 3 times. You can also check out my work on Fightful and WrestleZone. And now I give you over to Callum Wiggins.
You can follow me on Twitter at WeekMost14. Check out the Power Rankings every Saturday over on smarkmo.com, where I rank the WWE superstars based on their performances on the previous week. And then you also find over on smarkmo.com and also WWEFantasyLeague.com the Fantasy League, where our teams are continually picking up points based on their, again, performances throughout the course of each and every week, each and every show. So make sure you stay tuned with that, see who is leading the way as we head towards the next rest stop in this competition at Payback.
All right, everybody. Well, that's going to do us in for this round of the hot tags. Thank you for listening as always, and we will see you next time. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.